Marry the house, date the rate. That's what we are going to cover in this monthly market report. This is for you if you are a real estate agent, a financial advisor, or an attorney interested in market data to help you advise a client, or perhaps you are that potential buyer or seller looking for some direction. I'm Paulo Rodriguez. I've been a mortgage professional since 2005, and here is the market data that you need to make an informed buying or selling decision, or help your client do the same. Rates have many home buyers spooked right now, and that puts them in the dilemma of buying a home at the expense of a high mortgage interest rate, or foregoing on buying the home they need to avoid the high interest rate. My answer to that is marry the house, date the rate. Here is a quote from the mortgage specialist. Throughout history, during a recessionary period, interest rates go up at the beginning of the recession, but in order to come out of recession, interest rates are lowered to stimulate the economy moving forward. Historically, we've seen repeated uptick in interest rates followed by lower interest rates. I'm going to show you a couple of graphics that really crystallize what has happened during recessionary times in the past. Obviously, there is no guarantee what has happened in the past will happen again in the future, but history is definitely a good indicator. Here is a graphic going all the way back to the early 70s. The boxes highlighted in yellow show what rates did during recessionary periods. So if I was talking to somebody about this issue, I might use this graphic. I might have it on my phone or on a tablet, and I would walk them through it. This is what typically interest rates have looked like in a recessionary period. It's worth reminding them that a mortgage can be replaced in the future. As I have told many clients in making a decision, the quality of the real estate supersedes the quality of the mortgage. So let's convert all of this to a table. There's one thing that every one of these recessions has in common, and that is that in each instance, mortgage rates fell, and we can use this graphic to support our suggestion that a client should marry the house and date the rate. Over the past 5 recessions, mortgage rates have fallen an average of 1.8 percentage points from the peak seen during the recession through the trough. And in many cases, rates continue to fall after the fact, as it takes some time to turn things around, even when the recession is technically over. These are our go-to points when someone asks how would a recession affect the real estate business. This graphic, which I used last month and I think is very, very important right now, helps to remind us and to reinforce that a recession does not equal a housing crisis. This goes back to the early 80s and reflects what happened to housing prices. We just looked at interest rates, so what happened to housing prices? 4 out of the 6 times we were in a recession, homes appreciated. 2 times they fell, once marginally in the early 90s, and the other time was in 2008 during a recession like no other, because it was a real estate induced recession, unlike the others. Let's talk about the state of inventory, and I want to start with what we're seeing on offers received. We're seeing that number decline. It peaked around an average of 5.5 offers in April, then it dropped to 5, and now we're seeing about 4.2, which is the latest number released in June. And what that means is this rising mortgage interest rate environment is starting to soften demand. Now, keep in mind that 4.2 offers per home sold is still far above the pre-pandemic norm. So definitely still a competitive market, but we're seeing a little bit of a softening or moderation. What we're also seeing is that offers over asking price are declining as well. So a month ago, 61% of offers were over asking price, and that number has now softened to 55% over asking price on the average home sold. Again, keep in mind that it's still more than half of offers over asking price. So certainly a softening or a moderation, but definitely not a huge decline. Now, what we're also seeing is that sales are softening as well. So what does that mean for inventory? That's the big question. Inventory is on the rise. So that means more options for buyers coming to the market, which is a good thing. Let's walk through that right now. Here's a quote from the chief economist at First American. There has been a pickup in the inventory that we've seen recently, but it's not from a big increase in new listings, but rather a slowdown in the pace of sales. And remember that month supply measures the inventory relative to the pace of sales. Same inventory, fewer sales means more months supply. So what this means is that there are more options available, more active inventory on the market. So we're starting to add more options, but the market needs even more options before home shoppers have a selection that's roughly equivalent to the pre-pandemic housing market. So we still have far more buyers than we have sellers. That's continuing to put upward pressure on prices. Still not enough options out there, but certainly more coming to the market, which will ease some of that upward pressure. And that's fantastic information for discouraged buyers. It was near impossible a year ago to find a home. Now, and if you stepped out of the market a year ago, step back in, and while it's still going to be difficult, it's certainly not going to be impossible. As we have more options available in the market, now is the time to jump back into the process and really find that home that you've been looking for. Should I wait to buy a home? There are many people talking about that. Does it make sense? The average mortgage payment has gone up significantly, and that's a barrier to home ownership for so many people, and it causes others to pause, and we're certainly seeing that in the market. But more than that, nobody wants to buy a house that's going to be worth significantly less in 6 or 12 months down the road. And the media is certainly not alleviating that concern. Here are the national and local headlines that are bearing down on consumers right now. The cooling housing market enters the great deceleration. Home prices decelerate as the housing market downshifts. Buying a home at the wrong time can backfire big time. These are just some of the headlines that are pummeling consumers right now about the housing market. And certainly we are, in fact, in a decelerating time right now. If we are honest with ourselves, many of us that are in the business agree that we cannot continue to see appreciation like we've seen over the last 24 months. But the message I want to deliver to the consumer is that decelerating home prices does not mean depreciating home prices. Let's look at the difference between deceleration and depreciation, because all the forecasters we see are calling for appreciation. The average of those forecasters is 8.5%. Now, I think this is an important point that we need to focus on. Forecasters are calling for appreciation, but we have to really understand why they're calling for appreciation, and I'll get to that in a minute. When you look across Fannie, Freddie, CoreLogic, all of these forecasters, the average forecast is 8.5% appreciation. So this is the up-to-date forecast for this year. Now, let's look at the Home Price Expectation Survey, which is comprised of 100 economists, housing market experts, those that are in the know with regards to housing across the country, and they are surveyed each quarter and asked what they see for appreciation this year and 4 years ahead. And the most recent figure is 9.3% appreciation, which is in line with the 8.5% we saw in the previous slide from the other forecasters. So my message right now, based on what experts are saying, is you're likely to see good appreciation in housing this year and the next several years for that matter. The root issue of what drives real estate prices is supply and demand. It sounds obvious, so why mention it? Well, for the last 14 years, we have been below the 50-year average in the number of new construction homes brought to market. In other words, we're undersupplied as it is, and our population is not shrinking. That's a big, big topic, and this slide gives people a picture of what that actually looks like. All right, so that is the supply side. So what's driving the demand? The demand side is driven by the size of the millennials that are moving through the market, and you can see them here in the blue. The millennial generation being the largest generation behind the baby boomers. Millennials are moving through their peak home buying years, and this little box represents those peak home buying years. So there you have it. To summarize, lower rates ahead, but don't wait to buy because home price appreciation also lies ahead. Marry the house, date the rate. The mortgage can be swapped out in the future. Housing typically does well during recessions, so no crisis ahead, especially considering the supply constraints we have and the ever-rising demand. That's a wrap for the July monthly market report. I appreciate you listening in. Forward, subscribe, share. I'll be back next month. But before you go, if you're looking to purchase or refinance or know someone that is and would like a no-cost consultation with me personally, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to analyze if your debt is structured in the most optimal way or if there's room for improvement. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.